Hello, this is MTG Sly Guy with another Magic the Gathering deck tech. Today I'm going to be bringing you a Jund build that I put together a few days ago. I took it to Friday Night Magic this past week and came in first place, so I figured I would make a deck tech just to describe a couple of things that go on in it. To start, the mana base, I have two Mana Confluence, two Nykthos Shrine to Nyx, one Stomping Ground, 4 Temple of Abandon, 1 Overgrown Tomb, 2 Temple of Malady, 5 basic mountains, and 8 basic forests. On to the main board, starting with the 1-drop. The only 1-drop in my deck, it's Elvish Mystic. For 1 forest, tap it at a forest to your mana pool. Pretty basic mana dork. Use a 4 of. Also a pretty basic mana dork for green. Sylvan Caryatid, so 1 colorless, 1 green. It's a 0/3 defender with hexproof. You can tap it to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool, so it's great mana fix, great early defense. One of my favorite green cards in Standard. It is a 4 of. Also we have 3 Mizzium Mortars. For 1 colorless and 1 red. Mizzium Mortars deals 4 damage to a target creature you don't control. It's a sorcery. You can also overload it for 3 red, 3 mountains, and 3 colorless, and it deals 4 damage to all creatures you don't control. So it's a great board wipe, great way to clear the way for your own creatures to get through. Very good card. So it is a 3 of. Then we have Golgari Charm, 1 swamp, 1 forest. Very useful card. Basically all 3 of its choices that you can choose from are playable. You can either give all creatures -1/-1 until end of turn, destroy an enchantment, or regenerate all of your creatures, which is just great. So there's 2 in the deck. Next, 1 Abrupt Decay for 1 swamp and 1 forest. Abrupt Decay can't be countered by spells or abilities, and destroy target non-land permanent with converted mana cost 3 or less. Great card, great way to, for early removal, gets rid of Coursers, gets rid of Tension Spheres, Banishing Lights, Night Veil Specters, Boros Reckoners, just a great card for removal. I only have 1, so I only have 1 in the deck, otherwise I would probably have at least 2. Next up, Hornet Nest. There's 3 of these in the deck, for 2 colorless and 1 forest. It is a 0/2 defender. Whenever Hornet's Nest is dealt damage, put that many 1/1 green insect creature tokens with flying and death touch onto the battlefield. This card is primarily in this deck because it's part of a combo that I have, which I will explain in a moment. I'll just keep that up to the side. Next up, for 3 drops, Courser of Kruphix for 1 colorless and 2 forests. It's a 2/4. You may play with the top card of your library revealed. You may play the top card of your library if it's a land. And whenever you play a land, you gain 1 life. Very good card, probably the best card in Standard right now. Great for defense, gains you life, helps you get through your deck quicker. He is a 4 of in this deck. Next up, Polukranos. 2 colorless, 2 forests for a 5/5 with a monstrosity of XX and 1 forest. When he becomes monstrous, he deals X damage. Divided as you choose among any number of target creatures your opponent controls. Each of those creatures deals damage equal to its power to Polukranos. Great for removal of weenies, aggro decks. Plus a 5/5 for 4 is always a good deal. He is 2 of in this deck. Next up, we have Chandra Pyromaster. For 2 colorless and 2 red. It comes on the battlefield with 4 loyalty counters. For +1, Chandra Pyromaster deals 1 damage to target player and 1 damage to up to 1 target creature that player controls. That creature can't block this turn. For 0, exile the top card of your library. You may play it this turn. And her ultimate is -7, exile the top 10 cards of your library, choose an instant or sorcery card, exile this way, and copy it 3 times. You may cast the copies without paying their mana cost. I don't really use her ultimate. I've had opportunities to a few times, but there's not much use in it. Mainly what she's used for is her +1 ability and her 0 ability. Her 0 ability interacts very well with Courser of Kruphix, because I'll know what the card is that I'll be exiling and whether or not I want to play it. And her +1, not only does it help me get my creatures through by causing my opponent's creatures to not be able to block, but it's also very good because it combos with my Hornet's Nest. What I'll do is, if I have both in play, I will +1 targeting myself and targeting my Hornet's Nest, and I will then get a 1/1 Flying Death Touch on the field. It's a very handy combo. It actually helped me win in the final round last night against an aggro Green Devotion deck. He was beating me down with an Arbor Colossus and a Terra Stomper, and I was able to trigger the Chandra targeting my Hornet's Nest, and it kind of put a stop to that. Got me down to 4 life, but I managed to come back and win thanks to the Hornet's Nest and Chandra Pyromaster. So it's a very handy combo. Chandra is a 3-of in this deck. Next up we have Xenagos. For 2 colorless, 1 mountain, and 1 forest. He comes on the battlefield with 3 loyalty counters. His +1 is add X mana and any combination of mountains or forests to your mana pool, where X is the number of creatures you control. Great for mana ramping, great for getting creatures out. And his 0 ability is put a 2/2 red-green satyr creature token with haste on the battlefield. Great for getting board presence. You can even just use your Xenagos and put satyrs out every turn and just keep chipping away at your opponent. And his -6 is exile the top 7 cards of your library, and you may put any number of creatures and or land cards among them onto the battlefield. I have not ultimated him yet, but it would be very useful in a tight spot. He is a 3-of in this deck. Next up we have Stormbreath Dragon. For 3 colorless and 2 red, he's a 4/4 flying haste protection from white. He has a monstrosity for 5 colorless and 2 mountains of 3, so you put 3 1/1 counters on him, and when he becomes monstrous, he deals damage to each opponent equal to the number of cards in their hand. Very good card. I actually, in my 3rd round last night, I faced a mono white deck, and I got my 2nd Stormbreath out, and he just folded. He just shook my hand and said, "Good game." Very good card. One of my favorites, personally. It is a 4-of in this deck. Next we have 1-of Vraska the Unseen. For 3 colorless, 1 swamp, and 1 forest. She enters the battlefield with 5 loyalty counters. Her +1 is until your next turn, whenever a creature deals damage to Vraska the Unseen, destroy that creature. So protects herself rather well. Her -3 is destroy target non-land permanent. Just good. If there's something you don't like, it's gone. And her -7 is put 3 1/1 black assassin creature tokens onto the battlefield. With whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, that player loses the game. I actually, in the 2nd round last night, I was able to ultimate my Vraska and trigger a Mizzium Mortars overload, and I was able to swing in for the win on my next turn. Her ultimate can be slightly awkward. If it's just not there, there's really no point in using it. I'd rather save the loyalty for her -3, because it's usually more handy in a tight spot. But yeah, in the right situations, her -7 is just a win con straight up. Next up we have another 1-of Nissa Worldwaker. For 3 colorless and 2 green, she enters the battlefield with 3 loyalty counters. Her first +1 is target land you control becomes a 4/4 elemental creature with trample. It's still a land. Her other +1 is untap up to 4 target forests. Great for getting board presence. Having trample is really handy. And also her other +1 is just good. If you tap up to 4 forests to cast her, she's almost free to cast. And her -7, search your library for any number of basic land cards, put them onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. Those lands become 4/4 elemental creatures with trample, and they're still lands. That's just awesome. I would suggest being a little cautious with it if you are afraid of board wipes, but yeah, if you're able to get that off, most times it's just next turn you win. And lastly, I have 2 copies of Flesh and Blood. Exile Flesh is 3 colorless, 1 swamp, and 1 forest. Exile target creature card from a graveyard and put X 1/1 counters on target creature, where X is the power of the card you exiled. And Blood, target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature or player. This is just a good card. You can, if somebody puts one of your big bombs in the graveyard, like a Stormbreath or a Polukranos, you can cast Flesh and exile it and put all those counters right onto another creature. And not only that, but you can, for 1 mountain and 1 forest, do damage equal to a creature's power to another creature or player, which is just OP. Especially if I am using my blood on one of my Flying Death Touch Hornets, because I'd be more than happy to just kill off a creature. I'll target my Death Touch and target your Arbor Colossus, and bada bing bada boom. Thank you very much. So that is the main board. For the sideboard, I have 1 Reclamation Sage, just because enchantments are pretty popular these days with things like Banishing Light and Courser of Kruphix and Detention Spheres. Enchantments are just a big thing right now with Constellation. Also, some more enchantment hate back to nature. 1 colorless, 1 forest. It's destroy all enchantments. Pretty straightforward. Next we have 2 Ruric Thars for 4 colorless, 1 mountain, and 1 forest. It's a 6/6 Vigilance Reach. Attacks each turn if able, and whenever a player casts a non-creature spell, it deals 6 damage to that player. So, obviously, you sideboarding this in against any control deck, pretty much they have to deal with it as soon as it comes out, or they're just going to lose. They just pretty much accept the fact that they're going to take 6 damage to get rid of it, and that'll be the end of it. But still, very useful, and needs an answer. For the blue matchup, I have 3 copies of Mistcutter Hydra. It's a 4X and forest, enters the battlefield with X 1/1 counters on it, has haste and protection from blue, and cannot be countered, so perfect for the blue. You get this guy out against blue, and they're pretty much just hoping to overload Cyclonic Rift, maybe? Other than that, I'm not really sure if they have too many answers for it. But yeah, 3 of. Next, Bow of Nylea. Very handy card against the aggro. There's just so many uses. It gives all your attacking creatures Death Touch. You can use it to put a counter on a creature you control. You can use it to put do 2 damage to a creature with flying. You can use it to gain 3 life. You can use it to put cards from your graveyard on the bottom of your library. Just a very useful card. I side this in against aggro matchups. Anything that I need to have a solid way of gaining life, it usually comes in very handy. Next up, I have 2 Arbor Colossus. This will be coming in against any mid-range deck that has big flyers. Things like Archangel of Thune, Desecration Demon, or even I've seen things like Master of Feasts, or decks that might have Herald of Torment on a bestow. So that's what he comes in for. He's 6/6 with reach for 5 mana, 2 colorless, 3 forests. Has a monstrosity for 6, so he gets 3 counters, and he destroys the creature with flying. So a very good card for hate against flyers. Next, I just have my 4th Mizzium Mortars for any aggro matchups. Anything that has a lot of creatures, I'm going to want the extra removal. The same goes for 2 copies of Setessian Tactics. Setessian Tactics is 1 colorless and 1 forest. It has a strive for an additional forest. Until end of turn, any number of target creatures each get +1/+1 and gain tap. This creature fights another target creature. Basically, that's your big meanies or your little weenies buff up and reach across the field and slap your opponent's creatures right off the board. Very handy card for removal. Very good against aggro matchups or against mid-range, where there will be 1 or 2 creatures on the field, and you might have 1 or 2, and they might be equal strength, but this will get you just over the top, the little bit that you need to be able to smack them away. And finally, Reaper of the Wilds. Reaper of the Wilds is going to be coming in against any decks that have that like to remove things like the black matchup, because he's very hard for them to remove, and he also is able to get hexproof and have death touch. And the scry ability does come in handy because it allows you to fix your draws a lot, and mid-game fixing your draws can be really important, because by then I usually have my mana base, so I really don't want to be drawing too many lands if I can avoid it. I want to be getting out the gas.